Hello, and welcome back to Tech Fails, the channel where we dissect the biggest blunders, the most spectacular collapses, and the most ridiculous wastes of venture capital in history. Today, we are taking a deep dive into a product that has become a punchline, a glowing, blinking monument to Silicon Valley excess. This is a truly spectacular technology scandal. We're talking about a device that raised over $120 million from some of the most respected venture capitalists on the planet, all to do one simple thing: squeeze a bag. That's right. I'm talking, of course, about the Juicero. This isn't just a story about a bad product. It's a quintessential case study of failed projects. It's the perfect example of how a charismatic founder, combined with lavish funding and a cult-like belief in disruption, can lead to a public, embarrassing failure. This saga epitomizes the phrase, a solution in search of a problem. Get comfortable, because we're going deep into the bizarre, over-engineered saga of the Wi-Fi enabled juicer. This device was criticized from the start as utterly unnecessary, and its collapse provides many lessons in what not to do. Our deep dive begins with part 1, the genesis of the giant lemon. The story of Juicero starts not in a traditional garage, but in the highly polished, aspirational world of San Francisco wellness. The year is 2013, and the man with the vision is Doug Evans. Evans was a successful, charismatic entrepreneur and a passionate proponent of raw, plant-based living. He saw a supposed problem, or perhaps more accurately, he manufactured a problem, in the messy, laborious process of juicing fresh produce at home. This was the initial market gap he aimed to fill. His vision was incredibly ambitious. He wanted to create the Keurig of fresh, cold-pressed juice, an appliance that would deliver perfect, nutrient-dense juice every single time, with zero cleanup and zero fuss for the busy user. This focus on premium convenience was the core of his initial pitch. On the surface, this pitch resonated deeply with the wealthy, time-poor, health-conscious elite of Silicon Valley. These were people with the capital to pay a premium for simplicity. Crucially, they also had a cultural belief that technology could solve absolutely any problem, no matter how simple or mundane it might be. The initial funding poured in immediately. Juicero quickly secured capital from absolute titans of the VC world, including Google Ventures, GV, and Kleiner Perkins Caulfield, and Bayer's KPCB. Even the traditional food industry got involved with an investment from the Campbell Soup Company. That initial $120 million investment wasn't just a vote of confidence. It was a powerful endorsement that effectively masked the fundamental flaws in the product's premise. The company was valued at over $200 million before the machine was even commercially launched, based purely on hype. The pitch itself was very persuasive. The Juicero system wasn't just a machine, it was positioned as an ecosystem of convenience and health. The appliance, which they called the press, was initially priced at a staggering $699. This price would later be dropped to $399 in a desperate attempt to drive sales. It was beautiful, sleek, and conspicuously heavy, designed by former Apple and Tesla engineers who brought a high-end aesthetic to the device. And then came the proprietary juice packs. These were the single-serving sachets containing pre-chopped, pre-pulped fruits and vegetables. These packs were the core consumable in the system. The idea was straightforward. The user would load the proprietary pack, press the button, and the massive 4-ton hydraulic press inside the Juicero would squeeze the contents into a perfect glass of juice. This was meant to be the magic of the product. Evans and his team pitched the machine as a true marvel of engineering. They heavily promoted the Wi-Fi connectivity, the necessary QR code scanner, and the incredible 4 tons of force. That is enough force, they boasted, to lift 2 Teslas. They claimed this force was necessary to ensure optimal nutritional quality and product safety. But right there, in the complexity of the machine, is where the first major cracks started to appear in this massive technology scandal. Let's move to part 2, the over-engineered monster. We need to talk about the machine itself, because this is where the Tech Fails channel gets its juiciest content. The Juicero press was, without question, an absolute marvel of over-engineering. Why exactly did a machine whose job was simply to squeeze a bag need 4 tons of force? Juicero's pitch was that only their machine could exert the precise pressure needed. This was supposedly required to extract the nutrients in the optimal way. They made a huge deal about the custom designed sensors and the sophisticated algorithms inside the device. These algorithms would read the QR code on the pack and, based on the specific produce inside, would tailor the entire pressing cycle. This included adjusting the exact force, the speed, and the duration of the cycle, all to guarantee nutritional perfection. This level of customization was supposed to justify the machine's cost and complexity. Let's enumerate the internal components that made the Juicero such an expensive, complex device. This wasn't just a simple press. It was packed with electronics. This thing featured over 400 custom parts that were designed specifically for the machine's operation. It also contained 2 custom motors designed to drive the hydraulic press mechanism. Additionally, it housed 10 circuit boards, including a complex main board that managed the Wi-Fi connection and ran all the pressing algorithms. There was also a high-definition QR code scanner dedicated to authenticating the juice packs. Finally, there was the essential Wi-Fi chip to connect the device to the cloud. All this incredible complexity, all this immense engineering talent, was dedicated to automating a task that, historically, we've solved with a simple $20 citrus reamer. You could even use a simple traditional masticating juicer for a much wider array of produce. The cost of this complexity was astronomical, both in terms of manufacturing and the final retail price. It was a beautiful, shiny example of technological solutionism gone completely mad. The machine wasn't just pressing produce. It was pressing the narrative that everything, even something as simple as squeezing a piece of fruit, is fundamentally improved by putting a chip and a Wi-Fi connection in it. This is the true danger of these modern technology scandals. The narrative is so compelling, the founder is so passionate, and the money is so abundant that no one stops to ask the most obvious question. That question is this actually necessary? The most insidious feature, however, was the complete reliance on the proprietary packs. The Wi-Fi connection and the QR code scanner were there not just to optimize the press cycle, as they claimed. These technologies were actually put in place to act as a stringent form of digital rights management, or DRM. The machine checked the code to make sure the pack was genuine and that it was an official Juicero product. More importantly, it checked the pack's expiration date in real time. If the pack was a single day past its recommended freshness window, the Juicero press would simply refuse to operate. It was effectively bricked for that particular pack. This created a complete ecosystem lock-in, a classic razor and blades business model, but applied ridiculously to kale and apples. You bought the expensive machine, and then you were entirely locked into buying proprietary juice packs. These packs cost a hefty $5 to $8 each for a single glass of juice. This meant that a single serving of Juicero juice cost significantly more than a cold-pressed bottle from a premium grocer. It cost infinitely more than simply making the juice yourself using traditional methods. The absurdity was building behind the scenes, but the technology scandal hadn't quite erupted yet. That required a powerful catalyst. Let's move to part 3. The Bloomberg revelation. A hand squeeze heard round the world. For 2 years after its launch, the company operated in a protective bubble of wealthy, early adopters. They were shielded by the comforting sheen of massive VC funding. But in April of 2017, the bubble burst in one of the most publicly humiliating moments in startup history. Journalists from Bloomberg received a key tip and decided to investigate the core, fundamental claim of the Juicero press. That claim was that the 4 tons of hydraulic force were somehow absolutely essential to extracting the juice. What they discovered, and what they demonstrated in a now infamous video, was the complete, utter, and embarrassing truth. They took a proprietary, expensive Juicero produce pack straight from its delivery box. Instead of inserting it into the $400, Wi-Fi enabled, 400-part custom machine, they did something truly revolutionary. They simply squeezed it with their hands. The result? A clear stream of the exact same, perfect, cold-pressed juice flowed easily into the glass below. It turns out, the hand squeeze method was not only effective, but, ironically, was often faster than the 5-minute cycle of the high-tech machine. The key detail, the one that made the technology scandal truly explode, was what was inside the pack. The produce inside the Juicero pack was not raw, intact pieces of fruit and vegetable. It was already pre-chopped and pulped a moist, shredded slurry. The $400 machine wasn't juicing the produce from scratch. It was simply applying immense pressure to a pre-pulped bag of vegetables. It was, in effect, a highly complex, internet-connected bag squeezer. The subsequent backlash was immediate and incredibly brutal across social media and the press. The company's credibility evaporated overnight. Memes flooded the internet, showing people squeezing ketchup packets, and ironically, calling them the new Juicero packs. The narrative shifted instantly from innovative wellness brand to epitome of Silicon Valley stupidity. The revelation exposed the fundamental lie at the heart of the product. The expensive technology provided no functional benefit over simple human effort. The 4 tons of force, the Wi-Fi, the QR reader, they were all features that masked a complete lack of true value. Venture capitalists who had invested in Juicero attempted a weak defense. They argued that the true value was in the supply chain logistics, ensuring fresh produce delivery. This claim only deepened the absurdity. If the true value was just logistics, why did the consumer need a $400 machine in their kitchen? Why not just sell the pre-pulped packs through a subscription service and let people use a cheap manual squeezer? Let's examine part 4, the anatomy of a tech failure. The Juicero story serves as an invaluable lesson for the Tech Fails channel because it tragically ticks every box for a spectacular product failure. First, we see the hype cycle and the suspension of disbelief. The immense money flowed because the founders were selling a dream, a glossy veneer of wellness and convenience perfectly tailored to their affluent investors. In the VC world, it's often about the narrative and disruption more than the unit economics or common sense. No one wanted to be the VC who passed on the next Keurig, even though the premise was deeply flawed. This is a classic example of groupthink in high-stakes investing. Second, we see over-engineering as a mask for lack of value. The complexity of the machine, as we discussed, was completely absurd. The company tried to sell a 400-part device for what was, functionally, a 1-part problem. When a product is built with this level of unnecessary complexity, it signals that the design team was obsessed with how to build it. They never paused to consider if it should be built in the first place. This is a core flaw in many failed projects and a significant part of its designation as a technology scandal. Third was the failure of the lock-in model. The Juicero packs were supposed to be the continuous revenue stream, but the packs were significantly too expensive. The subscription model was too restrictive, especially with the DRM preventing the use of expired packs. Crucially, the core value proposition was easily defeated by simply squeezing the bag by hand. An effective lock-in requires the locked component to be genuinely necessary, or at least highly convenient. The Juicero system, unfortunately for its founders and investors, was neither. Finally, there was the profound disconnect from reality. The pricing and the needless complexity demonstrated this chasm between the company and the average consumer. A $400 machine that requires $8 proprietary packs is not a scalable consumer product. It's a luxury item for the hyper niche. The investors should have asked, who is the customer that needs an internet-connected device just to squeeze a bag of pre-pulped vegetables? The answer, clearly, was almost no one. Now we reach part V, the sunset and the aftermath. 16 months after the devastating Bloomberg report was published, in September of 2017, Juicero finally announced it was sunsetting its operations. The company shut down completely, offering a full refund to all customers who had purchased the overly complex machine. In their final statement, the company lamented that they had built an amazing technology and brand, but they admitted that the immense scale required to bring the price of the machine and the packs down was simply too high. This was the final, weak defense, claiming the failure was a matter of scaling. The reality, as we've seen, was a fundamental failure of purpose and utility. The total amount of money lost in this particular technology scandal was staggering. Over $120 million in venture capital was incinerated. The founder, Doug Evans, moved on quickly to pursue other ventures in the wellness space. The investors took their right down, learning a very costly, public lesson in due diligence and common sense. The Juicero machine itself became a strange cult object. It is now a physical representation of the bubble economy, sometimes fetching high prices on eBay from collectors of modern historical technical disasters. Think about what Juicero represented at the time. It was the absolute intersection of the Internet of Things, IoT aggressive venture funding, and the intense focus on disrupting every single aspect of daily life. The failure wasn't just in the engineering, it was in the entire underlying philosophy. The lesson for us here at Tech Fails is a sobering one. Not every aspect of life needs an app, a sensor, or a 4-ton hydraulic press. Sometimes, the simplest low-tech solution is unequivocally the best one. And when you create an expensive, complex machine to solve a problem that doesn't really exist, and that machine's primary function can be replaced by a human hand, you haven't created a groundbreaking product. You've created a massive technology scandal and a cautionary tale for the ages. That brings us to our conclusion: what we learned from the squeeze. What is the final, most crystallized lesson from the ignominious fall of Juicero? It's not really about the juice itself. It's about the sheer, unadulterated hubris of the entire operation. The failure of Juicero proves that innovation, when entirely divorced from practical utility and basic economics, is just a costly, disruptive hobby. When you raise 9 figures of capital, your investors expect you to solve a difficult, truly complex problem. They expect you to tackle something like mapping the human genome or developing commercially viable fusion power. Juicero solved the non-problem of squeezing a pre-pulped bag of vegetables. This story serves to remind every entrepreneur and every investor of one key principle. Just because you can connect a product to Wi-Fi doesn't mean you should connect it to Wi-Fi. And just because you can engineer a machine with 400 custom parts doesn't mean you should, especially when those 400 custom parts are defeated by a simple squeeze. Juicero will forever stand as one of the great technology scandals, a gleaming, expensive monument to the idea that sometimes the simplest technology is the most enduring and effective. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the press that failed to impress. What's the most over-engineered product you've ever seen? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Tech Fails, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next breakdown of a catastrophic collapse. Until next time, keep your common sense close, and your hydraulic presses, well, maybe just leave the hydraulic presses at the factory. We'll see you in the next failure.